Questionable Ethics, Chapter 9, Premature Expulsion. It's been ages since I've heard these songs, and God, did I need to hear them again. Especially here, in a place devoid of modern luxuries. Having a radio with classical hits from the 80s burned onto a disc playlist was overly comforting. And what helped the situation is that the radio must have had a new pair of batteries installed because it just kept playing. It had gone through about 20 different songs, and yet it just kept going. When we descended from the mountain peak that evening, the radio played the Outfield's one-hit wonder, Your Love, as we trekked down the path. Man, I love that song. It's a great fucking song. Brought me back, way back. I remember listening to this song in my mom's car as she drove me home from baseball practice. I could feel the soft, cushioned seats of the passenger side car seat. I could hear the sound of the lamp posts and fences passing the car by from the outside of its windows. Hell, if I closed my eyes hard enough, I could almost imagine the smell of freshly cut grass on my baseball uniform as I tapped my hands to the rhythm of the song on my batting helmet. Those were good times. I was innocent back then. I don't even think I had properly gone through puberty yet. Boy, was I in for a rude awakening. Good times, I think. But now, here I walk alone. Well, sort of. I don't know how many miles I was from home, and the goal of returning there grew further and further away with every passing second. As the evening grew dim, I sat on my rock outside my scout tent while the fire crackled in front of me at my campsite. The song Walk of Life by Dire Straits sang itself away through the speakers. Truly, it was my only anchor keeping me grounded at this point. That and autumn. This was the one comfort I needed. A nice little reminder of home, keeping that hope alive. I tapped my boot away, breathing in the night air as the fire kept me warm. I only now realized how long it had been since I had taken a shower, or eaten a good burger, or slept in my own bed. I listened to the music trying to remember happier times before Black Mesa, but it just made me more upset. Then again, life is what you make it, and if I couldn't go home, I could easily make it home for me here. After all, the neighbors weren't half bad. I could come to find this out as myself and Autumn descended the mountain earlier this evening. Me and her talked the day away. We had talked about American culture and even touched on some technology. We had just reached the bottom of the ascent up to the mountain, and we were approached by some Kirin who saw us up on the mountain top dancing to the music. The group that had approached us appointed one of their own to talk to us, as they were still quite afraid of me. Autumn was embarrassed on their behalf. The Kirin were mostly just confused as to what we were doing, and after some failed excuses from Autumn, I just spilled the beans and told them that we were dancing as if it was no big deal. Instead of laughing at us or looking in disgust at the quote-unquote human whisperer, they seemed intrigued by what kind of music we had been listening to. So I turned on the radio, and they seemed to like it. This was obviously a great relief to Autumn, as she looked as red as the sun as was yellow, beaming cheek to cheek before I'd diffuse the situation, earning a sigh of relief from her. I thought it was funny, so I decided to raise the stakes. I invited them over to my little campsite to listen to it some more, and after some contemplation, they agreed to follow me back. And so, here I sat at my camp, with 5 Kirin surrounding me, their eyes shimmering to the flames of the fire, their ears twitching and turning to the sound of music. After a couple of hours, they opened up a bit more to me as we began to talk a bit, and in time, I learned their names. Their names were Fern Flare, Petrus Inferno, Setkra, Flames, and Salavana Glare. In all honesty, I don't know much about them, as we just met, except for a few things. One is obvious. They like Earth music. Two, they're friends of Autumn's, as she was the only one who introduced them to me when our conversations first broke out. And three, she's been telling them about me every time we had talked up on the mountain. I wasn't too surprised that she was telling others besides Rainshine about me, in fact. I was sure she was gushing it to anyone that would listen. But what I was surprised about was the amount of information she was sharing. Apparently, she wasn't the only one that was overly inquisitive in Perilous Peaks. My arrival here had been a much bigger impact than what I was expecting. Turns out that my sheer existence here in the Kirin land has inspired Autumn's close friends, them being the ones that have the most contact with her, to open themselves up to possibly learning about things outside of their narrow-minded and secluded village. Their curiosity has gotten the better of them, and now here they sit around my campfire. They were once too scared to even look at me, and now they lay about the warm embrace of my fire while listening to human music. And it was all thanks to Autumn and her mile-a-minute mouth. I've seen it firsthand. Once you get Autumn talking, you can't get her to stop. She blurts out whole paragraphs in the time it takes you to blink or clear your throat. Oftentimes, I put the brakes on her before she talks my ear off. While some people find that annoying, I find it endearing. But for now, her lips remained shut, and that pad of paper she scribbled on had been retired to her saddlebag, because here she lay next to me, her head slowly rocking side to side with the beat of the music that continued to flow out of the radio speakers. Usually, at this hour, she would be at home, but having her here was a welcome change of pace. Her eyes were closed at the moment, and she'd hum away when the chorus of the song that was playing came around. Her behavior is shared with that of another Kirin who sat around the fire listening attentively to the tunes. "Hey, Mr. Adrian, sir?" One of the Kirin caught my ear as they spoke up. "It's Fernflare." She'd look at me through the light of the fire. After she had moved a bit closer so she could talk without really raising her voice, I looked over at her and smiled. "It's okay, you don't need to call me mister. Adrian is just fine," I responded, with a gentle wave of dismissal with my hand. She nodded with a quick clearing of her throat. "Right. Sorry, Adrian. What was I going to ask? Oh, where did you get that music box from? Did you always have it, or did you, find it? I don't think I've seen it here before, and Autumn never mentioned you having it. You don't want, if you don't want to answer, that's cool. I just was curious, that's all." She rubs her arm with her hoof as her eyes get a bit shifty as she looks off over her shoulder. A gentle chuckle would leave my lips as I move a bit closer to her. "Hey, look." I cleared my throat. "I don't want to know what you think I'm going to do, or what you think I am, but I'm not gonna rip your head off. If you ask me a question, So, come on. I lean over and pat her on the shoulder, which would exert a little jump from her. Just relax. You haven't done anything to piss me off, so don't act like you did. The mare would look over at my hand and then to my face, which was still masked for the time being. I could see her gulp down her nervousness as she stood her ground properly again. Right. I'm sorry, Adrian. You're the first human I've ever met. Actually, I think you're the only human anyone here has ever met. We've seen humans like you before in folklore and books, but never in the flesh. And please don't take offense to this, but you look nothing like the illustrations in the books. The humans we know are only, I'd say, 5, maybe 5.5 feet tall at most, which you're not. Most just wore animal hide clothing and held spears for hunting. They constantly fought each other for land and food. I carefully listened, as Autumn never mentioned any of this, and if she hadn't explained it in great detail like this before. Kirin have human beings in legend. How strange. Most, if not all, humans killed each other through war, and because of this, they've gained the reputation for being violent to outsiders and the conqueror of tribes. But you, however, are nothing like those humans, she said, before another Kirin spoke up. It was Secreta, who had moved in a bit closer after listening into our conversation. She's right. I was with her when she looked up these books in our village's library. We wanted to know more about humans, so we figured we would start there first, before bugging Autumn. And yeah, you're way taller in height and bigger in overall size. You wear more than just an animal hide, and you wield weapons that... She pauses to look down at the Colt carbine resting next to me before looking back up. I can barely begin to understand. But most importantly, you're friendly. Setorka finishes as Fern speaks up again. You're more than just friendly. I think you've greatly misjudged who you are. After listening to Autumn, we, well, have at least come to realize that you really aren't that scary, especially now. I smile at their words while taking in that all of that information they just fed. I'd have to bring this up with Autumn later. Really? Just a few seconds ago, you were about to run up a tree after asking me a question, I said jokingly. Satorika giggled and Fern scoffed. I wasn't that afraid, she stuttered. You just freak me out a little bit, is all. Secreta leaned in and with a very condescending tone taunted her. Oh, you're afraid of the big bad human, she said before she stuck out her tongue. This teasing would earn her a bump to the arm from Fern. Oh, shut up. You're just as scared of him as I am, if not more so. Especially since you're sitting all the way over there, she fired back. Secretary gasped at this accusation. Oh, am I not? I just wanted you to be closer to him than he is to me, is all. I figured you like to be near him, she said, as her eyes wandered back to the fire. Uh-huh, right. Anyway, Fern cleared her throat and motioned towards the radio. So, about that music box thingy. I looked over to it and nodded. Yes, it's called a radio, and No, I didn't show up here with it. Me and Autumn found it up there in the mountains while we were hiking around the valley. It was stuck between two rocks, and after jiggling it free, I turned it on and it worked. I have no idea how it got stuck up there, but I have a couple of theories on how. I think I think it did, but for that, I leaned over and turned the radio off. A silence now engulfed the area as all the occupants at the campfire looked up over at me with confusion. You're going to need to indulge me in a bit of a story first, I said, crossing my fingers over themselves as I rested my arms in my lap. Because, you see, this isn't just any normal radio. This radio belongs to someone. It has their name on it. A name that is a bit too familiar to me. A name that haunts me. And while I've never met this person before, I've met his colleagues. And I've met many of his colleagues, you might say. I leaned over and picked up the radio before flipping it over onto its bottom. Well, who does it belong to? And what do you mean by colleagues? Petrus asked before he moved a bit closer to Autumn while looking at the radio. I stared down at the name on the box, scowling at its mere existence. This radio rendered onto me a world of hate and sadness, and I now had to explain the things I had done on Earth before I ended up here. It was going to happen at some point. I just wish it hadn't happened right now. Then and again, I wouldn't have wished it had been any other time too. But it needed to happen, so why not now? Might as well rip this band-aid off while I can. For the name on the bottom of the box was indeed someone I had not met before, but I was familiar with his kind. What I mean is this radio belongs to Dr. Meliski, head of biomass weapon engineering and research at the Black Mesa Research Facility, located in the state of New Mexico. And there on the bottom of the device, as I presented the radio to the Kirin, was the dreaded, hateful insignia of Black Mesa Research Facility. This radio, by all known laws of nature, should not exist, and I cannot tell you why. Well, that was it for that chapter, and oh my god, I am really tired. I stayed up way later than I should have, and sorry for the delay for like quite a few days. I'm sorry I didn't post anything. It's just I wanted to put it off for an extra day because the end of the school year was just a day around the corner, so I just wanted to take a break. Then I forgot for like 2 days, and then I wanted to do, or then I got around to doing it now. So once again, I am sorry for taking such a long time to post, but yeah, that's it. It's just, it's its own thing. But once again, thank you for all your support. I'm quite surprised that I've even made it this far. But if you could, leave a comment. Tell me if you got any ideas for maybe a 150 subscriber special. I'll try to get something out on that time that it does, and hopefully it's something nice or fun, or even who knows. I'll figure it out then, but this is getting too long. All I can say is goodbye, stay golden, have a good day.